rewrite history, the greatest persistence.
Hello everybody, today I'm going to explain general fight mechanics on each boss in the 6th dimension elite critical mode, which could potentially help you get many feats, but my main focus for this video will be the social distancing feat, which I will try to guide you through. Having 128 head augment reduces the time to return back to normal form by 50% when leaving the World Forger's pool of creation, and having 228 head augments will extend immunity to the anti-monitor's power drain by 5 seconds after exiting save zones. The group setup we had for first and last boss was 2 tanks, 2 healers, buff troll, and 3 DPSs, and for second and third boss we ran with 1 tank, 2 healers, buff troll, and 4 DPSs. Some groups feel more comfortable running with 2 tanks throughout the whole instance, which slows down the burn, but it comes down to the group. With that being said, I will move on to first boss mechanics and the beginning of social distancing feat. On first boss, the group normally stands on the left side of the stage. The tanks will separate. One of them will be on the left while the other one is on the right. Usually the tank on the left is the one who pulls all of the adds, while the tank on the right focuses on only juggling or stunning them till the other one gets their aggro. There will be 4 sets of adds. Each set is composed of 2 groups and they can spawn in different spots. Sometimes one group will be on the left while the other one is on the right. Sometimes both can spawn on the left or on the right. I'm gonna talk about the adds you're going to encounter in this boss fight. I will start with the most dangerous one, which is the Jailer Sniper. This is one of the adds that usually needs to die as soon as possible, as he will normally put a target on a random player and shortly after does co-attack, which if not interrupted by either a launch, stun or a juggle will one-shot everyone in the line of sight between the sniper and the targeted player, including them unless they block. Next add on the list is Jailer Medical Officer, and the reason this add is dangerous is not because it can one-shot players, but because it can heal all of the adds as well as the boss. To avoid him healing, you must juggle, pull or stun him. The third in priority is Jailer Ordnance Officer. There are 2 things that you need to look out for as a tank. The first one is that the Ordnance has a skull attack that's gonna keep pushing you away, interrupting you and doing damage. The second one is landmines. If the tank lingers around the landmines, eventually they will explode, dealing very high damage to them and knock them down. The fourth add is the Jailer Engineer. He can shield the rest of the adds around him, even the boss if she's close. There is a skull attack that's gonna cuff his target, which is normally the tank. Next one on the list is the Jailer Captain. He's not that big of a deal when it comes to the tank, but they can put a gas that's gonna target a random person in the group, and after a couple of seconds the gas will start damaging everyone in the area, so players need to move out of it. One of the adds you will encounter in this fight is the Jailer Agent. He has a cryofoam skull attack which will stun players and kill them if they aren't a tank. And the lowest priority for the tank and the rest of the group are the Jailer Defender, Officer and Gunner, as they don't do anything significant. Just a little disclaimer, as a tank be careful with all of the stunts and pushbacks that happen to you due to the adds, as it can interrupt you from putting a shield, juggling or even cancelling your rage mechanic. After killing 2 sets of adds and during the 3rd set of adds, the boss will summon orbitals on the group. There are a few ways of surviving them. One is by blocking until the orbital animation is over, second is by dodging them, and third is by having a strong shield. Make sure you zoom your camera out so you can have a better view on the orbitals as to where they're dropping, as well as not rolling into other players' orbitals or accidentally putting them on the rest of the group too. Also make sure you don't roll back to your previous spot, otherwise you might get hit by the end of the orbital's tail. If you're not blocking or having a strong shield, the orbital can one-shot you, but if you stand in multiple orbital strikes, blocking won't help you survive. Sometimes you might get only 2 orbitals back to back, sometimes 3 or even 4. This mechanic will continue even after the boss is out. If the adds are not stunned or juggled consistently, they will cuff a random player from the group. The breakout of that cuff is to tap out of it. The way you can notice this specific cuff mechanic is a yellow lightning that travels from the adds to the group player that's going to get cuffed. Once the player is cuffed, they must tap out of it while receiving damage as well as doing such to the rest of the group members. On the 4th set of adds, the tank on the right will hold one group of adds so the group can burn them separately away from the adds on the left. This way the adds on the left remain close to full health and there shouldn't be another add set spawning during the boss fight. After killing the adds on the right and the boss hasn't spawned yet, the tank needs to pull adds one by one, preferably in the order priority I mentioned. Once the boss spawns, the tank on the right will lasso her right away, so she shouldn't target anyone else from the group, and the tank on the left will have to pull the last add set that will spawn. The troll can pop a shield just to secure that nobody dies from the boss or the ads at the time, or an atomic tank can use mass density, or an electricity healer can pop a transducer. To make sure that the boss goes to the right side away from the ads, the tank on the right needs to hide behind the pillar on his left or hide behind the edge of the pillar on his right, while also making sure to constantly lasso the boss. Once the boss is on the right side, the tank should not face tanker. They will have to keep distance so she wouldn't do a melee combo. The rest of the group has to move to the right side of the stage while making sure they're not hitting any of the ads, so they don't end up killing them. In some cases there will be a sniper on the tank on the left, and the solutions to it will be either having the tank that's on the right snatching the sniper away from the other one, which could also be done by the troll if they have a pull in their loadout. Keep in mind that when you're pulling the sniper and he's in line of sight of another ad, you will end up pulling the wrong ad before you actually pull the right one. So in order to avoid that from happening, you must jump in the air and pull the sniper from there. That way you will avoid the line of sight issue. Another solution to deal with the sniper is to have the tank constantly juggle the ads while also having both healers locked onto the sniper in case the tank gets cuffed or the DPSs can single target burn it. One of the other ads that can be troublesome to the group is the medico, as he tends to heal any damaged enemy. Once the boss is out, they can run her way and try to heal her, so they need to be pulled and juggled constantly. If you only kill the sniper, new ad sets should not appear, but if you accidentally end up killing more, you might have to deal with one more set of ads, which could include another sniper or a medico. So once the boss is out, she will start doing weapon attacks using rifle, and one of them is the surprise volley. This attack will knock down the tank, as the boss will repeat it 3 times, and it can only be stopped if the tank is blocking. The attacks Flip Burst and Rolling Barrage will leave the tank knocked down, so players need to help with the counters. 50 KO can be countered as well and has an AoE attack, so players need to stay away from the tank at all times. Another attack of the boss is the Laser Net Launcher, which won't do that much damage to the tank but will stun them for a second. Rocket Jump attack will damage anyone that's near the boss during it, so you definitely want to keep your distance from her. One of her other attacks is Landmines, where she puts a mine on the ground and players need to stay away from it as it will do AoE damage once it explodes. One of the most dangerous ones will be a Mortar attack. The tank might get one-shotted by it unless they have a shield up. During the fight with this boss, dropping a supply will trigger her counter attack, where she will use a supply of her own, healing herself while also spinning around with a laser attack which will start on the tank, and will one-shot everyone unless they block, go around it, or get out of range. Another mechanic of the boss will be a red laser that's gonna come out of her to the group and will do a short cuff which players can break out of. During the fight, the boss will put her hand in the air and there will be red lightning reaching to certain players, which indicates that in a couple of seconds these players will be cuffed. The cuff is similar to the yellow lightning one, and everyone that's cuffed will have to tap out of it as it will continuously do damage. Normally this cuff mechanic leaves one tank and one healer uncuffed, so the healer needs to constantly heal the group, and in case the tank with the ads is cuffed, the tank on the boss needs to go and stun or juggle the ads. There is also another solution where the group has an electricity healer and they can use transducer, or an atomic tank can use mass density. The troll shield can usually help during the cuff mechanic to mitigate the damage. The boss has 3 skull attacks. Similar to the jailer sniper, the boss will put a target on a random player and shortly afterwards do a skull attack. The difference is that the attack will be delayed for a couple seconds before it can actually be countered. It's very important to counter it, as it's an immediate one-shot to a random player. At around 60% of the boss health, she will start doing a jail mechanic where she will have a skull attack followed by a point, which means that 2 players will get transferred to a jail with an ad inside of it. In order for them to come out of the jail, they need to kill that ad and press on the cog displayed above their body. Players shouldn't be coming out if an orbital phase is happening, as they can get one-shotted upon coming out immediately. Around 50% of the boss health, she will enter a phase where she won't be doing weapon attacks on the tank, but instead she will start doing the mental distortion attack, where she will have a skull followed by a clap. That means 2 random players will get the dot, and the indication for it is an arrow above their head. If players stand close, they will spread the dot and damage each other. There are 2 ways getting rid of the dot. One of them is cleansing it by talking to Martian Manhunter, and the other one is by waiting it out. Keep in mind that this skull attack will keep on happening from this point on till the end of the fight. And now onto the social distancing feat. Before you go for this feat, know that communication is key for success, so having a mic is a must. Players should start separating shortly before the boss reaches 50% of her health, preparing for the dot to come out. If the dot is on the tank that's on the boss, they should just wait it out while having everybody else stay away from them. If the dot is on anyone else, they should communicate to figure out who's going to cleanse first, while the other player stays away from the group till it's their turn to cleanse. It's important that the group cleanses quickly so they can go back to doing their role. Since the feat is simple in concept but in execution can be difficult and sometimes things can get pretty chaotic in the fight, hopefully the video is more of a help to explain positioning as well as what to do to get the boss and feat done. And now on to second boss mechanics. In the beginning of the fight, the group needs to start at the back of the room since it has more space to move. The boss uses brawling as a weapon, so the tank needs to keep their distance from him, otherwise a combo can be deadly. The boss also doesn't do any type of range attack, so once the tank has enough space between them and the boss, he can start blocking, waiting for the boss to launch. Having any pets out such as Grim, Quizlet, Henchman, Robot Sidekick or anything similar will make the boss beam the pet, pushing it back, which may result in a group member getting in line of sight between it and the boss, knocking the player out. The boss will do a pushback which will indicate that the mirrors mechanic is about to happen. Shortly the room will be filled with mirrors in random spots and the group needs to stand in a safe spot away from the mirrors as the boss will shoot a laser between all of them, so standing in the line of sight in the laser or close to a mirror will result in a one-shot. In some cases jumping helps with avoiding the damage and sometimes it's ideal to stop doing what you're doing for a moment until you figure out a safe spot to stand on. When the boss shakes his fist, that indicates he's about to target someone with a laser, and if it's anybody else but the tank, they will die from it, so support needs to launch the boss to stop him from doing it. The boss has 5 skull attacks, but I will only talk about the first 4 for now. One of them is the ground pound, which will one-shot anybody but the tank that's close to the boss, but in some cases it can one-shot a tank as well. Another skull attack that he will do is putting a firepole under a random player in the group that will do AoE damage to everybody standing nearby, but it's nothing serious and it can be healed through. The third skull attack is the flare. Text will appear on the screen once Superman teleports to the middle of the room saying, "Get behind a pillar to avoid super flare," and the group needs to do that. In some occasions players can hide behind the cases in the room, but it's not recommended. The first flare is health based and from that point on all the flare attacks will be time based with 2 mirror phases in between each flare. The fourth skull attack on this boss is the charge. He will point at the furthest player and charge their way, and if not properly avoided he will end up one-shotting them and everyone in the way. This is why the troll needs to separate away from the group, tagging the boss in the back. This skull attack should happen once per every flare, but keep in mind that sometimes it might not happen and sometimes it can happen twice in a single flare. Shortly after the flare, the boss will teleport and there is one of 2 attacks that he can do. One of them is the whirling arm attack. He will put his arm in the air and the group needs to launch him to interrupt his attack, which is usually a one-shot. The second attack is a flash fizz barrage where he teleports on someone and starts spinning around them. Players need to move away immediately from the boss, otherwise they might die. The fight has 3 add phases which are health based. Every add phase will consist of 4 adds, of which each 2 are going to be the same, but before they come out players should split orbitals accordingly to DPSs and support. If you have Dead King Scepter artifact you can swap it in before dropping the orbital to increase the damage and reduce the cooldown of your orbital strike. Once the adds are out and if the group has an electricity healer or an atomic tank, they can use a supercharged shield as the adds tend to launch the group. The tank needs to pull the adds to the middle and once they are stacked up, the group needs to drop their orbitals depending on if it's support or DPS's turn to drop them, and ideally DPSs have to stack Eye of Geminis. While the adds are out, you can't counter the boss lunge attacks, however you can still counter his whirling arm and the shaking fist attacks. The boss receives a damage buff once the adds are out, so the tank needs to keep his distance. He also can't be damaged until the adds are dead. Keep in mind that some of the adds will sometimes require to be launched such as Cyborg, Flash and Hawk Girl, while others will keep stunning you such as Black Canary and Green Arrow. And last but not least, Mera has the ability to summon water golems. At around 75% you will get the first ad set, at around 50% you will get the second ad set, and around 25% you will get the third ad set. At some point in the fight the group might need to stop burning the boss to avoid overlapping mechanics. Around 60% of the boss health, a Superman statue will come out. The group needs to start focusing on killing it as soon as possible, as if it lingers for too long he can do 2 skull attacks. One of them is a scatter shot, of which players need to be careful as it can damage and sometimes kill somebody. His other attack is a freeze breath that will put the players in line of sight in cubes. If the players break out of the ice immediately they will damage everyone around them, so if everyone breaks out at the same time they will wipe the group. If the tank gets frozen they will automatically drop aggro on the boss and the statue, so the tank will have to break out immediately. From that point on, the statue will keep on spawning till the end of the fight. After the second flare, the boss will start his 5th skull attack, which I deliberately left for this moment, and it is the mental distortion mechanic that's connected to the feat. It's similar to the first boss. He will clap, which will be the sign of the dot, once again spreading to 2 random players. For social distancing feat on this boss, as I mentioned, players need to spread out after each flare starting from the second one. From that point on till the end of the fight, the boss will do the mental distortion attack after each flare. Normally if the players don't have the dot, they'd go to the intact pillar, while the ones with the dot go to cleanse as shown in the video. And now on to third boss mechanics. This boss is using a two-handed weapon and has 3 range attacks. The first one is a vertical hammered throw. This attack can't be countered, so the tank needs to get out of range, dodge it by rolling, or try to simply put a shield and survive the hit. The second is horizontal hammer throw. It's similar to the vertical one, however it can be countered, but at the same time it can also counter the tank if they are blocking. The third one is hammer throw weapon taps, which also can be countered. They will not do as much damage as the other two, but in the same time the consistency of the attack could potentially kill the tank. On the other hand, the boss melee attacks can be deadly if the tank takes a combo, so it's ideal for the tank to keep his distance. Dropping a supply in this fight will trigger the boss counter attack, which will make him jump on the supply drop and do a hammer spin attack, one-shotting everyone in his range. There is a specific moment when you can drop a supply without him noticing it, and we will talk about it in the next mechanic. One of 4 skull attacks that this boss has is the World Forger Hammer Flux, or in other words, the line of sight attack. The boss will jump in the air and slam the ground, then right after do a line of sight attack in front of him. Everyone standing in it will receive very high damage, which will result in death if they don't get out of it immediately. During this mechanic you can safely drop a supply without triggering the boss, but you need to do it in the very beginning of the attack, otherwise if it's late he might end up detecting it. If you're far away from the boss, you're safe to stand in the line of sight attack and even drop a supply that he won't notice. The next mechanic is the pose of creation. Once the pose appears, they will have a cog running down for 3 seconds, after that the pose will be activated. In case someone steps in the pole, they will get transformed, losing their powers and movement. Second skull attack is the anvil. When the boss gets down to around 75%, he will go to it, then raise his hammer in the air, preparing an attack that will kill those who aren't blocking. As soon as it's over, the first ad set will appear in one of the 4 corners of the room and 2 hammers will spawn following 2 random players. These hammers knock players back while also doing damage to them. While the hammers are up, the boss can't be countered in any way. The anvil phase followed by the ads and the hammers will happen 3 more times throughout the fight. It'd be ideal for the tank to stand in the middle so they can easily reach the ads no matter on which side they spawn. Now I'm gonna talk about the ads. The only 3 ads that are repeating from first boss are Jailer Ordnance Officer, Sniper, and Medical Officer. Savage Commando, Demon Detonator, Apoco Fiend, and Exterminator shouldn't be that big of a deal. The Apoco Fiend will be immune to damage till it's stunned by either the tank or the troll. Oracle Vervebot has 2 skull attacks. One of them is stunning a random player close to it, and if that player breaks out, it will damage the player surrounding him. And the other attack that Vervebot will do is charge into a random location and start spinning, pulling everyone towards it. Demon Soul Stealer will stun the tank, doing damage while healing itself. The tank needs to break out of the stun and interrupt it. Colony Healer is similar to Jailer Medical Officer, where it will tend to heal the ads and the boss. Peacemaker will randomly target one person, suppressing their powers and weapon attacks. A player can lock onto it and keep on lunging it until it's dead. The bodyguard will put a field around him, which will keep pushing the tank back, and it can also push the boss back while also putting a shield up on the ads or the boss. The maniac will tend to lose aggro charging a random player in the group. That player needs to move away from them while the tank tries to pull it back. The tank needs to have the ads juggled and stunned constantly, as well as keep the aggro on the boss, while the group should be saving their Orbitals and Geminis, similar to the second boss order, to ensure that the ads die ASAP. The third skull attack that this boss has is the caging mechanic. Once the boss puts his arm in the air, he will cage 2 or in rare occasions 3 random players, all but the tank. When this happens, the rest of the group will have to carry those who are caged to a pole to free them from it. In some cases, you might have to wait till the cage runs out. At some point, the boss will pick a blue crystal and target one of the players in the group with it. They need to dodge the crystal in order to survive or have a strong shield such as Transducer or Mass Density up. They also need to be careful as they can end up getting others hit by it, and in case you survive, the crystal will absorb around 90% of your power, so depending on the shield, it should be your last resort for survival. The last skull attack for this boss is the Mental Distortion. Once the boss is down to 50% of his health, he will do the same as the previous bosses. From this point on, the boss will be rotating his line of sight, cage, and mental distortion skulls. The only difference with this attack in the fight is that you can get the dot even when you are caged, so players shouldn't really be carrying and moving too much with others, especially if both players have the dot. To mitigate some of the damage in case both players have the dot, simply pick up the caged player and right after drop them to roll into a pool, but be careful as you can miss the pool, leaving the player caged for a longer time. And what you would do for social distancing on this boss is to spread out once the boss is at 50%. In some cases, cage players will get the dot, and if that happens, you need to leave those players in till either the cage or the mental distortion run out. If a free player gets the dot, they shouldn't be picking up the cage ones as they will end up passing the mental distortion. And now on to last boss. Anti-Monitor uses a combo of two weapons, Brawling and Hand Blaster. The range attacks are mainly Hand Blaster, and one of the most dangerous ones that the boss does is Meteor Blast, but the combo is different from the Hand Blaster we got. That combo can be dodged by rolling, or it can be mitigated by having a strong shield up while also having the group help with the counters, as the attack will leave the tank knocked down. Another combo is the Pulse Beam. It's not as dangerous, but if left uncountered, it will do high damage to the tank over time. The last combo is the normal Hand Blaster range attack, which can't be countered and won't really do high damage. Some of the melee combos use both weapons, and the first I will talk about is Power Discharge. This attack doesn't do that much damage, support roles can help countering it by lunging the boss. There are three very dangerous melee attacks that you need to look out for as a tank. They are the Uppercut, Fist Slam, and the Punt, also known as the Kick, as they can kill a tank easily, but they can be countered if the tank is blocking, stopping the boss from finishing the combos, and in some cases you can run away from the boss to dodge them. The boss has a Hand Blaster melee combo which can be countered, so the solution to that is either by putting a shield up or running away from it. The boss will be targeting the tank with a ping beam that will push them back, but it won't be doing high damage to them. The tank should save their shields for the boss weapon attacks, while healers should heal him through it. Anti-Monitor also does a pull-in which doesn't do damage to any of the players, but it can be quite annoying if you're going for the feed, as I will mention later on in the video. Dropping an orbital on the boss will trigger his counter-attack, as he will drop orbitals on all of the group members, one-shotting them unless they move out of it. The only time you can drop orbitals on the boss is in the very beginning of the fight. Also, if the group is comfortable enough, a player can do a countdown so everyone can equip their orbitals and Dead King Scepters if they have it and drop them in the same time. It's also safe to drop orbitals right after the boss has been triggered. Shortly after the fight begins, the boss will spawn 3 safe zones, of which the tank will take the one in the middle, while the group will take the one of the side zones, and the ad tank will take the opposite side. If the group stays outside the zone for longer than 5 seconds, they will start taking damage while also losing their power. A little bit later, the zones will disappear, leaving pink pool on the ground. Another 3 safe zones will spawn which the group needs to go to. The pink pools will do very high damage and players need to stay out of them. During the fight, the boss will put his hand in the air, lifting players off the ground, and if somebody breaks out, they will end up doing high damage to the ones close to them, which may result in killing them. At around 80% of the boss health, 4 ads will spawn in a random spot on the arena. Once they are out, if the group has an electric healer or an atomic tank, they can use a shield to protect the group. The ads tank needs to pull them ASAP while deciding which two to have for the rest of the group to kill. The priority is always to kill the sniper, similar to the one on first and third boss, since he can one-shot players. Second most important ad would be the medical, since they tend to get immune and run to the boss to heal him. The disintegrator would be the third on the list, as they shoot the tank with a dark beam, and if it's not interrupted by a lunge or juggle, the tank will receive very high damage. The engineer and ordnance are also similar to those on first boss, while the weaponer has no special attacks and got very low health compared to the other ads. And last but not least is the lurker. He got a skull attack, after which will be invisible, charging a random player, and if not interrupted by being pulled back, he will do a weapon combo, killing them unless they are the tank. The order you should be killing the ads in is sniper, medical, disintegrator, lurker, ordnance, weaponer, and engineer, but in some cases if the tank is comfortable with the ads, the group can kill the weaponer, as they will die eventually from the tank's constant juggles and emitters. Keep in mind that the reason you only want to kill 2 ads is to avoid having the tank overwhelmed by them. You don't want to kill all, as you will only end up getting a new set of ads that could include a sniper or a medical. What we usually do to kill the ads is have the tank with the boss go to one of the side zones, while the group moves to the middle zone till they kill the 2 ads they want to get rid of. This way we make sure that the group is keeping a safe distance from the ads so they don't get hit by a mortar attack, while also being able to reach and destroy the devices, which I will talk about next. During the fight, a device will spawn in one of the 3 safe zones with a timer running down, and if it runs out, the device will defense debuff everyone in its reach. This can be deadly to the tanks, as they can easily get one-shotted with a debuff, so the group needs to split up between the 2 side zones in the formation of 3 DPSs and a healer in one side zone, the boss tank alone in the middle, and the tank with the ads along with the troll and the healer. The boss tank alone in the middle and the tank with the ads along with the troll and the healer should be in the opposite side zone, as it's pretty hard for any of the tanks to take the device on their own. Healers should be spamming greens for the troll in the ad zone, so the troll can use a shield when the group is switching zones. The device can only receive damage of once, so the quicker the weapon combo, the faster you will get rid of the device. That's why it's preferred if the Throw and the Healer use Brawling, Shuriken, Storm Weapon, Mastery combo to destroy the device, as it's one of the quickest ways to take it down. Keep in mind that there will be a new device that will spawn shortly after a new zone, so if you want to drop orbitals, you should wait till the device is destroyed before doing so. Around 60% of the boss health, a shard will spawn in a random spot. The damage of it is health based, so the bigger the player's health, the more damage they will receive. While the shard keeps on doing damage to the player, it will also keep on interrupting them, so DPSs should focus on getting rid of it ASAP, as it can knock out players if it stays up for too long. Once the boss is at 50%, he will start doing his one and only skull attack, which is the mental distortion. The boss will clap his hands in the air, indicating that the dot is going out on 2 random players, and this will keep on repeating with each new zone. The 4 players standing in the same circle need to spread out in a square shape inside their zone, away from one another, while the ones in the tank zone need to spread in a triangle shape, otherwise players will kill each other. For social distancing feat on this boss, players will have to separate once they see the skull by moving outside of their safe zones, leaving only the tanks inside. Once they figure out who has the arrow above their head, the players without it need to move back into the safe zones, leaving those with the dot to figure out the cleansing order. They will have to stay away from the safe zones and hug the walls, as the boss can pull them in, which will spread the mental distortion to other players, but they can also block to avoid getting pulled. Tanks will take priority to cleanse, especially the one on the boss. Being a troll for this fight is not fun, as the power often will be a problem, so unless you go with 2 trolls, I'd say to run extended supercharging chest and full vid skill points spec and augments. As far as the artifacts in this fight, the ones I had for the most of it were Rao, Power Harness, and Soul Cloak. Whenever I felt comfortable, I artifact swapped as shown in the video, but for the most part I was simply trying to power up players as well as pay attention to mechanics and defeat. I hope this video helps you have better understanding of the mechanics on each boss, as well as help you get the feats. Good luck and thanks for watching.
My people need me beside them now.
Time to take up your grave, make you lower your voice. I told you not to play with the mist.